Welcome to Easy Peasy Books, From Author to Authority, the lively and engaging podcast for business professionals who've always believed they have a book in them. I'm your host, Jillian Whitney. Join me as I chat with authors and industry experts from all around the world to explore simple strategies to write, publish, and leverage your business book. Whether you're an entrepreneur, executive, or an employee, this podcast is for you. This summer, I'm taking a break from live streaming, which means we're going to be going into the vault. I'll be bringing you the most popular conversations from the LinkedIn Easy Peasy podcast that I think are the most relevant for authors. So let's get stuck in. Today, I'll be bringing you the LinkedIn Live that I did with Jackie Goddard on February 6, 2024. Jackie is a speaker, an acting coach, and a TEDx speaker coach who helps people craft what's called a signature talk. As I was listening back to this conversation, I had so many light bulb moments about how this can apply to authors. When you write a book, you're essentially crafting your signature story, which is taking your expertise, your experiences, and your unique perspective and weaving it together to serve your audience. And that's what a signature talk does too. Whether you're looking to add speaking to your author platform or just want to understand how to better tell your story, this conversation is going to be incredibly valuable. So let's dive into my conversation with Jackie Goddard about moving from expert to authority. Woo-hoo-hoo! And we're live once again on another Tuesday, and I have a special guest in the house today. And it's kind of fun because we're like switching sides on the microphone today. Jackie is the guest and I'm the host. And before I was the guest, Jackie was the host. So welcome, Jackie. Before we get stuck in with our topic, I wonder if you could just quickly introduce yourself and tell people who you are and what you do.
Oh, thank you so much for having me here, Gillian. I've been so excited to talk to you again because we had such fun on when you were guesting for me. So yes, I'm Jackie Goddard. My business is Power to Speak. And I like to say I get people excited about stepping in front of an audience, in front of their audience. So lots of people obviously are really quite frightened about speaking in public. But what I like to do is use my acting training. I have an acting background to get people performance ready so that they're comfortable and confident when they step onto a stage and they're excited about sharing their message. So that's what I do.
That's beautiful. And I love that you talk about it as a performance because it truly is a performance. It's not just standing up and having a chit chat with the crowd. It's like it's a practice. There's so much to public speaking. And I get excited just listening to you, Jackie. And I have to just tell you, I'm going to put in a plug for your YouTube channel, for your podcast, because you have so many great tips. Everybody, you must follow Jackie. You must go to her YouTube channel, check out her podcast, Great Speakers. And by the way, I was in your live earlier today listening, and you had the wonderful John Asperian, and you were talking. Yeah. And I loved how you guys were talking about your origin stories and what a great thing to bring to a talk. But we are talking about a certain kind of talk today, which is from expert to authority, crafting a signature talk. And I love this because it's interesting. Just as a little preamble, I had recently been talking with a friend and she said, "Do you have a signature talk?" And I went, "I don't even think I know what that is." And then we were talking about what to talk today. And I mentioned that and we said, let's talk about a signature talk. Yeah. So before we kick it off, Jackie, everybody knows about TED Talks. We all want to do TED Talks, or we've done a TED Talk, or we're thinking about doing a TED Talk. So TED Talks are like, kind of the thing we all dream about. This is different. So can you start off by telling us, how does this differ from a TED Talk?
There's a TED Talk is basically about the idea. So if you step onto a TEDx stage, then it's not about you. It's never about you. But we'll come on to that. It's about the idea that you're bringing to the audience. So it's your talk. I mean, there can be a crossover though. That's not to say that a TED Talk hasn't got anything to do with a signature talk. Quite often, when people come to me for a signature talk, it's about what they do and their values and their business and their personality. And that's, you start putting together a signature talk from their origin story, from the experiences, the career that they've had, the life experiences that they've had. But always you have in mind the audience. It's never about you sharing how fabulous you are or what an awful life you've had and look at me, I've survived. Those are all great, but they're only great if they are relevant to your audience. So the TED Talk is your 18 minutes worth of getting that idea worth spreading out to the audience. Your signature talk is about getting you and your personal brand and why you do what you do and why it's important to your audience across.
I love that. I love that. So then essentially, is your signature talk basically your why? Like why you do what you do?
It depends it depends who your audience are. So the signature talk, if people come to work with me on a signature talk, there's always an audience in mind. Like, who are you talking to and why should they care? It's great. You can put a signature talk together. This is me. This is what I've done. This is what I do. This is how I can help you. That's great. But actually, who are the audience? Are you going to be talking to the same people all the time? Have you been given a brief? Quite often, people will come to me because they've been given a brief. They've been asked to step on a stage and they have a reason for being there. They know who the audience is and what the audience need to take away. It's then, okay, well, what are the stories and your experience that you can share with the audience that's going to benefit the audience? So relating your stories, finding out who you are and why you do what you do it means that you can find those stories and those experiences from your own life experience that you can share that will resonate with your audience, that they can relate to, that they can, so that you make a connection with the audience through your stories. So
I love that.
talk. So when I work with clients, it might be kind of think, I always look to the TED Talk 18 minutes because I think that's worth looking at to get a flow together of what it is that you want to get across to the audience and why they should want to listen to you, how you're going to engage with them. So if you can craft a signature talk from your own experiences to benefit the audience and give it that sort of 20 minutes, then that means, and I've quite often done it, I end up on a screen doing a 10-minute version, or I'll end up somewhere else in a room with people doing a 25-minute version or a half an hour version, or I turn it into a workshop. But the signature talk is the core of who you are and why you do what you do and why it's of benefit to the audience and why they should care.
Wow. Wow. So basically, how do you get started? Because it feels like we have so much that, and I think that there's probably many people either attending our live today or listening on the podcast that'll be saying, okay, this sounds like something that I need, especially if they're an expert and they want to kind of move into that authority, because it sounds like this is what really can set you apart. So where do you start? Because I think that we all have so much. How do you narrow it down?
Well, how I start with people when they come to me is I say, get it all out of your head. People will come to me with an idea of what it is that they need to be speaking about and who the audience is. And I'll say, okay, just get it all out of your head. Whatever you're thinking, doesn't matter what it is, and it doesn't matter how you bring it to me, whether it's in bullet points or whether it's just like a brain dump. Get it all out of your head, because when it stays in your head, it goes round and round and there's no beginning, no middle, and no end. And it just kind of goes on and on. So get it all out onto a piece of paper and then we can start work. So then you can come to me and we then look at all of the journey you want to take the audience on, what the takeaways are for the audience, what you want them to take away at the end of that signature talk. And then we look at all of your stories. What stories in your life, your experience is going to illustrate that point that you want the audience to take away. So you can have a whole, I like to have more at that point. More is great. So you get it all out of your head. We say, right, we've got all of these stories. This is what you wanted to be when you grew up. This is you as a 9-year-old. What did you play in the playground? Because generally, and this is something, if you find out what people wanted to be when they were 9-year-olds, you can guarantee that somehow what they're doing now relates back to that moment. And so you kind of use those stories from there. How did that journey for you? What were the failures that other people can learn from that you've been through? What are the triumphs? Everything. Let's get all of those stories out there. And then if you've got a brief of, say, you're doing a 20-minute talk on a stage for a marketing event, or it's about the topic is personal branding, or the topic is whatever it might be, whatever your thing is, why you've been asked. And then you can create from all of those stories a talk that suits that audience, and you can adapt it to the time, and you can adapt it to the brief you've been given. But what you want to do is get it all out. And then once you've done that, and once you've crafted, say, 15, 20 minutes, then you've got a bank of stories that you can add in if you need to make it longer. And then you can sort of take bits out depending on what's needed for the audience that you're with.
I love that. I love that. Do you find that it's hard to have people identify stories? Because I know a lot of times people will say, nothing interesting ever happens to me. Like I should have, gone mountain climbing and I didn't save the cats, and, just all those different things. I'm from ordinary.
Everybody thinks that though, don't they? Absolutely everybody will come to me and say, oh, I've got nothing, I don't know who would be interested. But we don't. We know our story inside and out. We know it backwards. We know who we are. And actually, we don't value the experiences that we've had, and we don't value the things that we've done, and the way that we've interacted with people, the things that we've done in our life. And it's not until, and this is my job really, and this is the part of the job that I love, is that I will, quite often I'm on Zoom, so I will set somebody up on a laptop, and they're facing my wall, and there's big bits of paper on the wall, and I say, okay, so what's the brief? And we'll write down the brief, and who's the audience, and then why you, and they'll start talking, and it's my job to go, I like that, that's great. So why did that happen? And then I will dig. And I will draw out those stories. So then as they're speaking, I'm writing down on the wall, and then I have a big sort of flow chart, and I say, okay, and we cross off, and we work out where their story overlaps with the message that they're trying to share. So it's not about just putting stories out there for the sake of it, because that's self-indulgent. You don't want to do that. It's not about you. I interviewed John Burkhart. Do you know John Burkhart? He's a speaker and a workshop. He does sort of workshops and stuff. And I interviewed him for speaking about speaking. And he basically said, the audience don't care about you at all. The audience they really do not care about you, what you've been through, everything else. What they care is that they only care about themselves. So you have to always be thinking about why they would be interested in this particular story. They're not interested because they want to find out more about you. They're interested in that story because they want to find out more about themselves. And so you need to really have that bank of stories, that brief that what it is that they need to be taking away from the event where you're speaking, and then you can cherry pick those stories that will resonate with that audience. It's the same with the visuals. Yeah, it's the same with the visuals. The visuals aren't for the audience to read. They are for the audience, but they are to underline the points and the stories that you're making. They're not there for the audience to read or for you to follow.
They're not your speaker notes.
No, they're not your speaker notes.
I love that. I love that. So, okay, so I think we have a good idea now of what a signature talk is. So it's like your core story. It could be, so basically if I was going to, so this is something for aspiring speakers. If we want to get out there and kind of move beyond, doing workshops, maybe we'll want to get like keynote speaking at conferences and things like that and whatever. But we would maybe have our signature talk, but we would morph it for the audience. So if I was going to go and talk to realtors versus if I was going to go and speak at a convention of insurance people, I would want to look at the particular needs of that audience and then just kind of do some tweaks. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because, you know, realtors are going to be interested in something completely different. You know, they're looking to you to maybe, you know, impart some knowledge, give them a set of skills that they don't already have. And that's going to be quite different to the requirements of another group. So yeah, you have to adapt, do your research, you know, really, really look at who they are, where you are. I mean, I've comedians that turn up in a town that they've never been to before. I've heard comedians say, oh, you know, the road down where, you know, or I've just been into the fish and chip shop or whatever. And automatically you then have a connection with the audience. The audience say, oh, he knows you know, she knows who we are. There's a connection. So you need to do your research on your audience. Who are they and why should they care, basically?
Wonderful. Wonderful. And so is this applicable to, obviously it's applicable to anyone who is an entrepreneur, anybody who has a book. I would imagine that this is probably a really great key thing for authors, because I'm sure a lot of times we write books based upon what's our origin story or something we're passionate about, or we would spend all the time writing a book.
Yeah.
But is it also relevant to employees?
Yes. Yeah, of course. I've literally just been working with a team from a big corporate, you know, that deal with the top 5 supermarkets over here. Their products go in and they are constantly having to go in as part of their marketing, as part of their sales, to go in and make presentations. So they need to be able to stand in front of a quite intimidating. I've worked with companies where they're doing investor pitches, you know, and they're talking to people about a lot of money. And these people that they're talking to are quite intimidating to them. I'm sure they're, you know, lovely people. But when you're walking into a space and there's a lot at stake, that's when people get very, very nervous. And so the process of going through preparing a signature talk, it kind of just makes you totally aware of who you are. And so that you can show up authentically, you can show up as you, because you've taken ownership of all of your stories and your experience. And so much of what we do in our lives, there's a lot of it that, not that we're ashamed of necessarily, but there's a lot of it that we kind of think, oh, people don't care about that. Or, you know, I don't want to talk about that. But if you're hiding stuff, then that's why you feel uncomfortable sometimes when you step in front of an audience, because there's stuff that the audience could find out and it makes you uncomfortable as a speaker. So you kind of have to do the work, become self-aware in order to be able to step comfortably in front of whatever audience that is. Even if you're an employee and you're speaking for your company, then until you take ownership of who you are and have that self-confidence. Cicero, the ancient philosopher, said, confidence is a trust in oneself. And so once you actually trust yourself because you are fully aware of who you are and why you're doing what you're doing, then it's so much easier to step in front of an audience and speak.
That's brilliant. And it almost makes me feel that it's like they're all colored threads, all of our experiences and our stories. And it's like when we do a signature talk, it's like we can almost weave them together. And we're taking these standalone things, but when we put them together, we could stand back and say, wow, look at that tapestry I've just created based upon all the threads of my life. So I'm feeling that you can also get a lot of clarity from this as well.
Yeah. I mean, and a lot of the clients that I've worked with, it's become the foundation of all of their social media. So once they are completely comfortable and they've taken their stories, and once this is the other thing that I do is when I am talking to people, it's I validate what's good about what they've done in their life. I validate that actually, that is important. People need to know that. That's incredible. I can't, you did that. And so just having somebody to talk to and validate the stuff that you've been through means that you can then walk into a room, you can step on a stage, you can put out a post, you can make a video. And because somebody else has validated that for you, you feel confident to share it. And so that's a lot of what I do. And it's giving people permission to show up, giving people to show their permission to show their personality.
That's great. So speaking of people, let me hop over to the people who are joining us today and bring them in conversation. So we have the lovely Jeff Young, who's working very hard because he was at your live earlier today.
Hi, Jeff.
He says, thanks for saving my front row seat. Well, we had to, Jeff, because you just show up and we love it. We love it. So thank you for being here. He's ready to listen and learn how to talk. We have Karen, greetings all. And she's already admitted to being a great fan of yours, Jackie. So she is just following you along. So that's awesome.
Fabulous.
That's awesome.
Thank you, Karen.
That's awesome. We have Morad. Hello, Jillian. So thank you for being here today. We have Chandra, who says good afternoon. And it's always wonderful because we just never know what time zone people are joining us from. We've got John Asperian, who's doing lots of running around today. He says hi to both of you. He was on your show earlier today. Go listen to that replay because I loved how John shared his origin story and then how that kind of got you talking about your origin story of your business. So he says, can't wait to see you both at Birmingham next month.
Yes.
And we will be speaking. So that's awesome. That's awesome. Jeff Young says, makes sense, Jackie Goddard. So yes, everything you're saying is giving us so much clarity. Marcia says, hello, Jillian and Jackie. Thank you for this episode today. So I know Marcia she's working really hard at, her speaking. She's doing LinkedIn audio events. She's working hard to start thinking about doing her TED Talk. So I know that what we're talking about is resonating for her. So I wouldn't be surprised if Marcia doesn't show up in your DM. Says, I like that. Make a connection to the audience that gives value. And that is key, Jackie. Is it with every kind of speech that you do? Is that not? How can you give us a quick tip on how to better connect with the audience? If like when you're going to speak somewhere, how do you do that?
It's about rapport, isn't it? It's about building rapport. It's about finding, quite often, if you get a chance, certainly I try to do it myself, is get to the venue early or, just mingle, talk to people, build a rapport if you can, if you get a chance to do that. There's a wonderful word that I love to share since I learned it only this year, and it's homophily. Now, if you've ever heard of the word homophily, and I would be interested to know if anybody's heard of the word homophily, but it is that connection we find with other people. And it's like when I discovered the word, the person that told me explained that it was like, when you go to a foreign country on holiday and you're stood in a queue somewhere and you hear the accent or you find out that somebody is from your town or, from your village or even your country, is suddenly you've got a connection, and then you'll find them and you'll build a relationship with them. If you bumped into them in the street, in your town, in your village, you wouldn't pass the time of day. But because you have that connection, because you found something that you have in common, then you can connect. Which is why, going back to the comedians, if they arrive in a little town in the middle of nowhere, then they will make a comment about the pub or the local fish and chip shop or something, because then that's something that they have in common with the audience. So it's always worth really doing your research and finding out what you have in common with the audience that can make that connection.
That's brilliant.
And storytelling as well is, we've been telling stories since the time began as a way of making connections and teaching people. So that's a lot of what we should be doing when we're speaking to audiences.
So would you say that storytelling is probably a real big part of your signature talk is basically having those relevant stories that support the points that you make in your talk?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. They're a way of not just engaging and connecting, but they're a way of introducing some humor. Yeah, so storytelling is important because it draws people in. And also it's difficult to tell a story monotone. So when you tell a story that you know very well or that excites you or is going to excite the audience, your voice, your vocal variety and your energy will rise. So because you're telling a story. So if you're just relaying data, then it's very easy to kind of get into that mode of just speaking on one pitch. Whereas if you're telling a story, you get more animated, and your vocal variety changes.
That's where your acting coaching comes in, because
Absolutely.
I have never thought about that. That's like, like, boom, not on my radar. But when you just said that, it was just like light bulb. Like, it was like, that makes so much sense, because yes, it's like when we tell a story, or at least this is what happens to me. When I tell a story, I'm almost transported back into the time. So I feel like I'm telling the story real time. So it's like, and then this happened, and then we did this, and then the car broke down. And you can't help but kind of re-experience it all over again. And I kind of feel like I bring that with me when I tell a story.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Yeah, and you take your audience on that journey with you. They can feel it. That's that Maya Angelou quote, isn't it? That, people won't remember what you said, they won't remember what you did, but they will remember how you made them feel. And so if you tell a story, it engages people on an emotional level. So even if your talk is about the most boring data in the world, if you hang it on a story, then people will remember it because you've left them with a feeling.
And we do remember the stories. It's like, I know some of the, if I kind of think of some of the talks that I've seen, TED Talks, other talks, conference keynotes, whatever, the stories are what I remember the most. And it's like, oh, I remember when Seth Godin lost to that puppet, when he was trying to win an award, and it was the lamb chop puppet. It's like, I still remember it, because it's like, again, he brought the whole experience into it. And I don't even remember what the point he was trying to make, but I remember the story. So they're so sticky, aren't they?
They are. And this is the thing. Sorry, I was going to go back then. It's made me think about, getting it all out of your head, all of those stories, get them all out of your head, because it doesn't matter how much you write down. You can write a book and put all of that into a book, but you can't fit all that into a 20-minute talk. So don't ever try to put it all into your 20 minutes. Pick 2, 3, 4 points that will really land. Because what you're doing with a talk, whether it's a signature talk or a TED talk, is you're opening a conversation. You're starting a conversation. So that's all you're trying to do. You're not trying to educate with every single piece of knowledge you have. You're not trying to. That's when less is more. If you've got that 20 minutes, don't feel like you need to put all of your knowledge into 20 minutes. Just you just want to distill it down to the absolute golden nuggets that people are going to want to come up to you afterwards and ask more questions and find out more about you.
I love that. And that's probably why you want to go, next stop is a book. It makes perfect sense. Marcia says lots of great takeaways. So she's enjoying this today. We have Ashwin who says, hello, hello. And we have Mary Wu here who says, so we need to find someone like Jackie to unpack our brain and tell us how we're interesting. I think that is just probably sums it all up, that it's like, sometimes, what is that expression you use in the UK, that you can't see something out of the jam jar if you're in the jam jar?
Yeah. You can't read the label when you're in the jam jar.
That's exactly what it is.
Absolutely.
In America, it's peanut butter. But, it's so true that sometimes we're too close. And like you said, it's so easy for us to say, oh, yeah, well, I adopted my dog, but, at the rescue center. But what does that mean? Well, in this context, it could mean a whole lot, because you're big-hearted and you did this and you did that, and, all these different things. So I think that she absolutely summed that up. We also have Sandy who says, that's awesome. So we're getting a lot of people who are finding what we're talking about very, very insightful today. So that's absolutely great. So Jackie, summing it all up, because there is a lot here. So what's a good takeaway for us to, take from this all today?
I think another important thing that actually we've not really touched on is making sure you believe what you're saying. Because if you don't believe what you're saying, your audience won't either. So if you are an employee and you're presenting a slide deck that you've only seen that morning, it's going to be very difficult to make an interesting and, engaging presentation, because you've not had a chance to really sort of get into it. So try to find a way in, even if you are making a presentation with somebody else's words, try and find a way in that makes it yours, makes it your own. Because when you are comfortable and you believe what it is that you're saying, then your audience will believe you as well. So that comes from acting. That's when the light bulb went off for me. Before I went to drama school, I was dressing an actor, and he had to open a play, shagging an actress under a sheet in the middle of the stage. Obviously they were faking it, but it had to sound real in front of all this audience. They weren't there at the time. It was a technical rehearsal, but I was mortified. I was thinking, how can they do that? How embarrassing to have to do that. And so he came to me for a quick change afterwards. And I said, how do you do that? How embarrassing is that to have to do that in front of an audience? And he said to me, if I don't believe what I'm doing, the audience won't believe it either. And for me, that was the moment I thought, actually, I can be an actor, because I think I just didn't have the confidence up until then. But I realized at that point that if I didn't do it for the audience, if I didn't really believe and tell the truth of that character, then the audience wouldn't go on that journey with me. And so when you are a speaker and you have a journey to take the audience on, and you have an outcome that you want to leave them with, then you really need to believe what you're saying, because if you don't, they won't either.
Wow, that's powerful. That's powerful. But I 100%. That's right on. Woo! This has been a fabulous, fabulous episode today, Jackie. Thank you so much for sharing this incredible information with us and insights. I do just encourage everybody to follow you, connect with you, send Jackie a lovely note, please, and let her know that you met her here today. And again, check out your YouTube channel, check out your services. You're top notch, Jackie. I'm a huge fan. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. We'll see you all next time. And thank you for being here. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. What struck me was when Jackie said, if I don't believe in what I'm doing, the audience won't believe it either. I think that's so true for authors as well. If we don't believe in our message and our story, how can we expect our readers to? I also liked her point about people thinking nothing ever interesting happens to them. I hear this from aspiring authors all the time. But in actuality, it's our ordinary experiences. When they're viewed through the lens of how they can serve our reader, they actually become extraordinary. So here's my challenge to you. Start thinking about your signature story. What are the experiences, those life lessons that led to your expertise? And how can you weave them all together to better serve your reader? Whether that becomes a book or a signature talk, or maybe even both, it's all about owning our story and believing in its value. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Easy Peasy Books, From Author to Authority. If you found value in today's episode, I'd be grateful if you could leave us a review. It helps other aspiring authors discover our podcast. To learn more about writing, publishing, and leveraging your business book, visit my website at easypeasybooks.com.